Welcome, welcome everyone. So wonderful to see you all. Folks who are online, folks who are here in person. And yes, this is the Tuesday Tune-In. And before we get started, there's Allison and her friend. Yep. So just be sure to turn your phones off. Welcome. So announcements. Yep. This Sunday we will have the Sunday Sounds of Dhamma at 9:30 Eastern as usual. And then in the evening on Sunday the 15th, we'll have the first of the virtual art tours, starting with the British Museum. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. And there will be simultaneous interpretation in Spanish for anybody who is interested in that. And there will also be recordings for folks. It's a drop-in, so just use the same link that you used to get here tonight, or that for folks who are here in person, that big black button on the homepage of Dassanaya. And what else? Also, the vihara is closed, so I'm going to be setting a personal silent retreat here. I'll be here, but the vihara is closed from the 23rd to the 28th. And other than that, the weekly programs are going to be the same. And so with that, we'll have our usual Tuesday tune-in program, which is roughly 25 or 30 minutes of guided meditation. And then I'll give a Dhamma talk, and we'll have plenty of time at the end for any kinds of reflections, questions, comments, and dedication of merit at the end. And so, it's okay if you weren't here last week, but last week we had a mention about, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, about how to meet phenomena in your mind kindly, gently. So tonight I thought we would try an experiment, a meditation experiment on how to do that. So we'll begin with settling into the body as usual, just really finding our place here and some relaxation, I hope, and some balanced posture. And then the suggestion is to just notice what comes into awareness without taking any particular thing as your primary, but just noticing what comes into awareness and kind of giving it a little mental nod. Just mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. Just that, just acknowledging the presence of what comes into awareness. If it really helps, you can divide things up into bodily or mental sensations, if that helps you to stay focused. But anyway, let's give it a try. And please also, for those of you who are new here, know that only the speaker's feed is the one that is recorded. So the one here of the general room in the vihara, and all of you who are online, you're not recorded unless you're speaking. So please also, if you haven't already done so, please mute your mics. And establishing your meditation posture. I like to begin with a little bit of movement. Just Loosening up any tension that can be released at this time. And also allowing the bones of the spine to come into alignment and bring the body into a balanced posture. Feeling the weight of the body on your seat or whatever supports you might be using. And relaxing the belly, really allowing yourself to settle right here in this place, in this time. No need to hold on. Allowing the breath to breathe the body naturally. Alignment of the spine all the way up through the neck and the head. And perhaps the muscles around the shoulders and the chest can relax and let the bones carry the weight of the body. And just beginning to observe the mental activity. So just noticing what comes into awareness and just giving it a little nod. Here it is. Being curious about mental sensations and just attending to what's present in the moment. Just a nod to each phenomena. If you find that there is a lot of mental activity, you might think about it as being like the radio. No need to argue with the radio or sing along with the radio. Just listening. Just listening. Still attending to mental phenomena. Just sensations in the mind. Noticing how they arise, persist, and cease. With that soft inner gaze, just a few more moments of attending to mental sensations. All right, that brings us to the end of the meditation for now. And if you have any answers, reflections, or questions about that later, we can take those at the end of the evening. I'll begin as usual with the homage to the Buddha and the Triple Gem. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. People have a natural tendency to divide themselves up into categories. I'm in this group and you're with me, or you're in some other group. There's this use of our capacity for discrimination that we set up these kinds of categories. For better or for worse. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes not so much. And the same is true in Buddhism, or I would say in all sorts of spiritual traditions, but definitely in Buddhism, there are ideas about one aspect of the tradition or another, or one school or another. And we would do well to really think about those with an eye toward what's actually being practiced or what's actually being said. So, recently we had a ceremony here, and we had a ceremony where a couple of people took up the ethical vows of the Zen school. It's a ceremony called Jukai. And when that happens, then people receive a name, and they also receive a teaching oftentimes. Maybe it's a drawing, or maybe both, a little bit of a painting and a teaching that relates to the name that they've been given. Kind of like their own little koan, their own personal question to carry with them. And so I was looking for a teaching for Todd's name. So Todd Brown was one of the two people who took the vows. And Todd's name is True Stream, Abiding in Light. So I wanted a quote about the stream and the light, both. And I was looking for a quote specifically from Dogen. So who's Dogen? Dogen, Eihei Dogen is how he's usually referred to, Eihei Dogen Zenji. So Eihei is his temple name. He started a temple called Eihei-ji. Ji is temple in Japanese. And Dogen was his Dharma name. And Dogen was born in about the year 1200. And his parents died when he was very, very young, and he became a young Tendai monk. He was born there in Japan, and became a Buddhist monk in one of the sort of what we would call the esoteric traditions, the Vajrayana style of tradition. And suffice to say that by his 20s or so, he had some profound questions that couldn't be answered. So he went to China, and he had some encounters and some awakening moments with Ru Jing, his teacher Ru Jing, in China. And then he came back to Japan and founded what is now known as the Soto School, which it comes down from the Chinese Chaodong school, because that's what Ru Jing was in. So anyway, Dogen was a very prolific writer because he came to Japan and he felt like he was bringing a new way of practice. And he was also somewhat of a geek, he was also somewhat of like a know-it-all geeky type. And so his style of writing is very, very dense. It's very, very difficult sometimes. And it was in medieval Japanese. So even contemporary Japanese have a hard time just even figuring out the words that Dogen was using at the time. But nonetheless, we now have some decent translations in English. So I went to Dogen's extensive record. So this is not his life work that he's actually known for. He's actually known for a different work called Shobogenzo, the Treasury of the True Dharma Eye. But this is his extensive record. And by that is meant, and it's translated by my friend, Taigen Dan Leighton, and Shahako Komura, both, friends of mine. So senior Roshi is older than me, but folks that I know and have practiced with. And so I have a very good confidence in their translations, thankfully. And this extensive record is basically like short, most of it, this tome, is short teachings that Dogen would give actually standing up in the meditation hall. They would just get up from a meditation and he would feel inspired to start saying something. And so there was somebody, there was a scribe who was supposed to be writing these things down, and they get passed down. But this one particular Dharma Hall discourse is what they're called, is a fairly unusual one because it actually captures a conversation between Dogen and one of the students. And why is that unusual? Well, for one reason, because in Zen, when we have practice encounters, they're typically individual. They're typically one-on-one events, as distinct from, you might notice in the Theravada school, for example, that group interviews, quote unquote, or encounters are very common nowadays, especially. But so people would have one-on-ones with him. They wouldn't be standing in front of a large group having a conversation like this. But this one happens to be that case. And I share it with you because I hope that it will lead us back to an investigation that is meaningful to us today. But you can let me know what you think about that when we get there. So I'll just read a little bit of it and then we'll go from there. Someone asked, someone in the assembly, one of the other monks, asked, "What is Buddha?" All right, well, let's just cut to the chase, right? Don't ask me out to dinner first. We're just going to go directly to the main point. Okay, what is Buddha? And teacher Dogen responded. And before I give you what he responded, I want to say this. That question, so the student asked, what is Buddha? And that question has a long history in Zen. This is not something that would be unusual at all. In fact, in the Chinese tradition, there are many, many stories, recorded stories of the student asking the master, what is Buddha? And the master would give various answers, various quite surprising answers. So for example, Zhao is one of my very favorite of the old masters, Chinese masters. He's Tang Dynasty, so he is, let's see, 8th to 9th century or so. He lived to be over 100 apparently. And he was so famous for giving people amazing answers that there's an entire book recording just that, just like a one-line question, a one-line answer from Zhao. He's known as Joshu in Japanese. So Joshu's answer to this question was mind and not mind. That was his answer to the question of what is Buddha? Mind and not mind. And actually he says mind, and the student says, well, mind is limited. So he goes with it, basically, because that's not actually the case. But nonetheless, Zhao goes with it. And he says, okay, not mind in that case. Which has a particular meaning also in the teaching, you know, of an experience of going beyond a sense of limitation of one's personal consciousness. But anyway, that was Zhao's answer. He gave the big mind answer. And Yunmen, about not quite a century after Zhao was asked the same question, what is Buddha? And he said, a dried shit stick. A dried poop stick. So that's what they would clean themselves with. So, you know, in rural America, a long time ago, I hear that at outhouses, they would have corn cobs for this purpose. And in ancient China, they had some kind of a stick. And so the meaning of this answer, or at least my interpretation of the meaning of this answer, is something like, even the most mundane thing you can think of, even the nastiest thing you can think of, is a demonstration of the perfection, is a demonstration of the truth, the highest wisdom. So don't get all high and mighty about it, right? That's part of the, that's also part of the thing. Don't set it apart from you. Yeah? So those were some of the historical answers of what is Buddha, right? So then Dogen gives a very surprising answer also, but Dogen's answer is surprising because Dogen gives a quite traditional answer, a very, very traditional answer we would have expected to see maybe 1,000 years earlier. He says, finally, future births are prevented with the special attainment of cessation not arising through analysis. So I'm going to read that again. Finally, future births are prevented with the special attainment of cessation not arising through analysis. Okay, now if that wasn't interesting enough, the response of the monk who asked him is, don't teach people using lesser vehicle Dharma. Oof! Ouch! Wow! That's like a huge zinger. To say that to Dogen especially, that would be quite, you know, cheeky, to use an English word. To put it mildly. Huh? Don't teach people using a Hinayana Dharma. Or basically an answer that says, like, you know, don't give me the limited view. That's a limited view. Or a view associated with the self. That's how it would have been with a kind of selfish form of practice, is how it would have been characterized as a polemic in many of the Mahayana schools. And Dogen says, well, I'm not teaching people using lesser vehicle Dharma. So the monk asks again. So now this must have been like one of the high officers. This must have been like Jakuen, or one of the guys, you know, who was like the early ones who started practice with him. So it asks again, what is Buddha? And Dogen gives the same answer. Finally, future births are prevented with the special attainment of cessation, not arising through analysis. So if we parse that out, what he's saying is that there is, that a Buddha has set up the conditions for parinibbana at the end of their life, that they have set up the conditions for consciousness not to continue on to anything but nirvana, to anything but absolute peace, you could say. Peace beyond non-movement, peace beyond stillness, peace beyond bliss, peace beyond everything. And that happens because of this special, and that's a key word, we're going to talk about that, special attainment of cessation not arising through analysis. So something ends, something drops off, something is resolved without analysis, without us thinking it through, not by us figuring it out. Okay? So that's the very kind of, and it is in fact a very, very traditional, very, very old school sort of what early Buddhist style of answer. The footnote says that he got this from Vasubandhu, but it's true that Vasubandhu would have spoken like that, but it's not. I wouldn't say that that's why he's saying that. But then he goes on and he says, what's it like from that perspective? So then he tries to explain, okay, if you didn't get that part, so let me tell you again in a different way, right? That's what's Buddha, but since you seem to be not happy with that answer, we'll give you another answer, which is the same, but from a different angle. So then he says, in characteristic poetic Dogen, heaven is not high, earth is not dense, right? So the qualities of things are not discerned, are not the thing that we notice about them or discriminate them by. Mountains and rivers, and this is where it comes, and the sun and the moon, right? This is why it became part of the quote that went onto the back of Todd's Raksu, Todd's robe from his taking his vows. Mountains and rivers and the sun and the moon are not separated. So again, this state of non-distinguishing, non-separation of things. The radiant light, so the radiant light represents wisdom. Radiant light penetrates each place. The radiant light of each place penetrates each place. So again, the same answer, right? That Yunmen was giving. That everything is fully penetrated by the highest wisdom, no matter what you're talking about. Whatever place it is, it doesn't matter. And then he uses some very colloquial language about what would be considered exotic people in Japan. He says, a Persian riding a white elephant enters the Buddha hall. Handan people, so Handan was a city in China where people walked in a very exquisitely sophisticated way. There's a story about that, somebody losing their self because of that. Handan people with bare feet circumambulate the monk's hall. So like very, very unusual things happen. Very, very special, unexpected things happen. And this is the nature of awakening, right? It is something that is, by definition, completely different than your experience up until that point. And it is unexpected. We never know when it's going to be happening. We might have a sense that we're close, but even then, I would say, there's that moment when the conditions come together. And that moment is unpredictable. So continuing on with his poetic reply, he paused, he had to think about it for a second. A little more poetry. Okay. the bright moon follows someone as if there were a reason. So again, the moon also is another metaphor, ancient Buddhist metaphor for wisdom, the light of wisdom. And this last bit, which is my favorite line of this particular piece, he says, naturally, white clouds provide rain with no mind. Naturally, white clouds provide rain with no mind. And what's beautiful about this is that in a literal way, you could say this is what happens, right? Things just naturally happen. Clouds produce rain. There's no need to overthink it. That's the natural world. That's the world that's showing us reality and all the principles of reality in a very literal way. And in a metaphorical way, clouds are usually understood as thoughts, the thoughts in the mind. So that's why we did a meditation on thoughts today. I hope this is all gonna, you can all sleep on this and sort of see if it all threads together. Clouds are like thoughts, and the thoughts provide rain. So the rain is the Dharma. The rain is the nourishment of the Dhamma with no mind. Right? So again, it's back to what he originally said, right? Without analysis, without figuring it out, the mind does its work of expressing the Dharma. That's clouds producing rain with no mind. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to describe something that he is saying is a special moment, that is an unconstructed moment. It is not something that we figured out or that we did by a recipe or putting the blocks together. That it is somewhat unpredictable. It's unknown when it's going to happen. And that it has this flavor of being something quite unusual, something distinct from everything that has come before it. A moment of awakening, right? In the early Buddhist suttas, the way you hear this is somebody would have an aha moment. They would have an insight that the Buddha would, from a teaching of the Buddha or from Sariputta or one of the nuns, and then they would say, you have turned upright what had been upside down. So if you think about this, it's like this. It's like if I have the bell and I have it in this position, it's not a bell, actually. It doesn't function properly. But if I turn it upright, if I understand actually what it is, then I turn it upright, and then I can play the bell. Then it is what it's supposed to be. Awake. So anyway, many metaphors, but the reason that so there are many reasons why I wanted to bring this forward. One is this question of the, you could say, the acceptance that the path is not something constructed. We take steps, we do what we do, we make choices. But there's an aspect to it that isn't really subject to that. But the other thing is about these unusual experiences. And lately people have been asking me a lot about this. People have been asking me about, it even came up at the brunch on Sunday, about seeing your past lives or being able to read other people's minds, or suttas that talk about people being able to, fly and things like this. Having interactions with devas, there are a lot of Buddhist teachings around having interactions with heavenly beings or with beings that are in other states of existence besides human. And the funny thing about all that is, all of those things are basically side effects, you could say, of the practice. But the real question for us as practitioners, no matter what happens in your experience, no matter what you became aware of, is what is this showing me about reality? What is this teaching me about the nature of reality? Because everything you're experiencing is happening within reality, right? So it must be in some way a demonstration of the way that reality works. Even delusion, right? Even mistakes, even confusion about things is showing you how it really works. You know? Even when you choose something that leads to suffering, okay, then you're seeing the dynamic of how suffering arises and how suffering ceases arising. Right? A clear demonstration. This is how it works. So whatever you think Buddha is, you know, whether it means this historical person, this statue here, the the um, the mind, some sense of ease, some sense of past life, ending of past lives, whatever it is that you think is happening with all that, I would say it's it is it is never what you thought. Awakening isn't what you think, right? It must be something that goes beyond that. It must be that cloud with no mind. So we're encouraged to come back again and again to the nature of this particular experience and to examine that. What is it that's really happening here? What is it that's really happening here? And then eventually there is this this what we typically refer to in English as insight. And the way that it's described in the suttas, in the Pali suttas, the earlier suttas, long before Dogen, is yatha bhuta jnana dassana. It means, literally, it means things as they are, knowing and seeing. That is how the Buddha described the dawning of wisdom. Things as they are, knowing and seeing. Right? So Buddha, which means awakened one, must be one who knows and sees the thing, right? This thing, whatever it is. So those odd experiences or those fancy poetic words, it's all basically leading you back to being the thing itself without the idea of the thing itself. So you have that cessation without analysis. You have that knowing the end, knowing the resolution. And that resolution of moment by moment becomes a great resolution, one that is so profound that it changes the whole stream. So just to go back to the beginning here, just to say, what is Buddha? There's a long tradition, there's a long history of asking this question. And you could ask yourself what you think it is. But I would suggest that the more important approach is to see if you can kind of drop into it. See if you can find Buddha in the shit stick or find Buddha in the cloud that's pouring down rain. But remember that everything has the potential to be that teaching for you. So don't think that Buddha is far away. Don't think that Buddha is some other being, some other quality. And don't divide up the world into that way of thinking. Mm. Okay. So that's a little different approach than usual. So we'll see. If anybody has any comments or reflections or questions. It's also a little bit, yeah, actually, at the usual length. Mhm. If nobody asks a question, then you all have to go around and say what you think is Buddha. That's
I didn't see that I have a teacher online that I go to stick, so.
Mhm. Oh, no, because you need to have the microphone there. Mhm. So yeah.
I don't have a question, but I was just saying that I was excited to see Stig online because I go to many of his classes. So happy to see you here.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. My response to the question and the inquiry was, you've got it with the silence that's happening. I'm not trying to be cheeky with this response, but I think that's the real response. There's a certain profoundness with how you guided us to touch into this. I felt it. I felt it. And not only speaking, it's gone. But I mean, there's a certain coming and going of this, and um, it's just wonderful when one can touch upon that, and it starts disintegrating when we start talking about it in some ways. But it wasn't disintegrating tonight. That was the beauty about. So something was happening as you were telling these stories. I love the upside, the bowl. You know, the form and the formless, back and forth. And sometimes I get into a sense of, yes, conceptual, non-conceptual, a space in between. And then I get a kind of disenchantment, and it gets quite intense with, there you go. Stop it. Stop this. Okay. Just stop. Just stop. Okay. So that's my response to that. Okay.
Yes, yes. Lovely. Thank you so much, Dick, for sharing your response with us. And yes, oftentimes, I will say this with great kindness, oftentimes when you share a Stig, I think, wow, your life is a koan. Your life is a wonderful koan. Or maybe a series of koans. I don't know. Nice.
I'll share a little bit.
Would you mind? Okay.
No, I just want to repeat sort of what Stig said, that the silence, I was at an IMS meditation in the spring, and near the end of it, there was a bird feeder outside the window in the dining hall, and a squirrel came up and began stealing the bird food and putting it in its mouth and looking around like this. And there were about 8 of us sitting around, and we were crying. We were laughing so hard, very silently. We were all just watching this, but it felt like such an alive moment to just be really present with my mind fully open. And I would never have had that kind of delight in this very banal scene that's just a squirrel diving into the bird food. So it's that openness, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay, well, I think that is all that needs to be said or wants to be said at this point. Yeah. All right. So I just want to close by indicating the merit of our practice this evening. So may our practice be a cause for clarity, a cause for profound peace for ourselves, for the squirrels, for all beings, that all beings might discover themselves as true Dhammas, as true Buddhas. Beings might be free from mental and physical suffering by the power of the Buddhas, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and each one's efforts. May all beings be liberated. Okay, friends.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.